Hello slashing friends, if you're looking for a very fun build to play with the Necromancer on the Season 3 of Diablo 4, I'm very happy to give you my setup in order to do T100 dungeons with Bone Spirit. It's also quite awesome against bosses and I'll explain everything in that video. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe and big thanks for that. Let's start with the skill, and you want to play Corpse 10 drills in order to have the Wombo combo and then to send a Bone Spirit. Make sure to always hit Bone Spirit because you recover some spirit and also have your cooldown reduced if you have a critical strike. Since we are around 100% of critical strike, you'll always have your cooldown ready on Bone Spirit. Then we have Bone Splitters. It will be only useful against bosses, otherwise you won't have to use it. Decreepify in order to decrease the damage from enemies and also to reduce the cooldown. It's very important to have it in order to always have our ultimate Bone Storm. Bone Storm will be very good since we have increased damage and also some damage reduction, but especially in order to always generate a barrier. You'll see with the gear that we are almost unkillable with this setup. Finally, we have Corpse Explosion, which will be useful in order to generate the Corpse passive, and we won't use it because it will be automatically triggered with the ring. For the gear, you want to have this helmet. Even if the passive is around Bone Spear, you have way too much good things on it, so physical damage, essence, damage reduction, critical strike damage, and you want to have this unique helm in the build. Then for the armor, you want to have damage, bone skill damage, armor, damage reduction, or some life if you want, and also the aspect granting you more than 5k armor, so it's very interesting because we are around 14k armor with this setup. You can also think about this one only against bosses or speed farming, because if you are running T100, you want to have this one, but if you do some speed farm, you can also take it in order to have the +4 of Bone Spirit. Then for the gloves, you want to have this one with intelligent, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, lucky hit chance, and Bone Spirit critical strike chance. You want the lucky hit chance in order to have this effect to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate. Then for the pants, you want to have the fact that when Bone Storm damage an enemy, it will grant you a barrier and make you almost unkillable, and you want some damage reduction and life on it. For the boots, movement speed when you do a critical strike, you can also take it as a base stats, and it's mandatory to have +4 to Bone Spirit. Afterwards, you can also take some stats on your boots. You'll want a sword in order to have critical strike damage, intelligence, critical strike damage, and so on, and the fact that you'll have increased critical strike chance and critical strike damage after using Corpse 10 drill. You also want this offhand in order to have 20% cooldown reduction, 10 on the base item and 10 on the stats. You can also get some resource generation and damage reduction, or take damage reduction from shadow damage over time. It's new with this season because with the Seneschal you can put this rune which will put enemies into shadow damage. So it's interesting to have this one here. If you want, you can also put it, for example, on the punt, and there's a line I will show you a bit later on the Paragon, but you have it here. It will grant you 20% more damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies. So it's very interesting to put it on the Seneschal, and with this setup you can enjoy these affixes. Be careful, it's only with the Seneschal, so after this season it will not work anymore. For the aspect, you'll want to have the increased duration of Bone Storm when you consume a corpse. Unfortunately, even after plenty of dungeons, I didn't find it again, but it will be much more better than this one, so make sure to put it if you have it. Then for the ring, you'll want the spirit generation when you cast Bone Spirit, and life, critical damage, critical strike damage, damage to close enemies. You also want this unique ring and the amulet, the fact that you'll have increased critical strike damage, and you can take intelligence, bone skill damage, damage reduction, and so on. Globally, it's interesting to get some life because you'll have the barrier as the amount of your life, so it's still interesting to put some life. If you want also, you can put it here, some life here, and some life here. Finally, for the gear, you'll want to sacrifice the skirmisher in order to get critical strike chance. Here, you'll get increased essence, and this one to get increased critical strike damage. You can also think about this one, but it's less interesting, so if you don't have any trouble staying alive, you should better get this one. For the Seneschal, you want to get Tempest, the Dusk support in order to apply shadow damage over time. You want to have Resource when you hit an enemy, and Fortify in order to enjoy the 10% damage reduction when you are fortified. It will come very easy when you are in combat. Then you want to have either Protect if you're doing T100 dungeon, or Adrenaline if you are doing some bosses. You'll want the same setup, Tactical for the cooldown, increased duration and damage reduction. For the skill tree, you want this point in order to put bosses vulnerable, then 3 points here, 1 point here, and you want this one in order to generate essence and also increase your damage. You want to increase damage to curse enemies, increase damage to close enemies, and you can also take this one if you want, but it's not mandatory. Here the fact that you'll have cooldown reduction on Decrepify, and you get here the fact that you'll have enemies vulnerable. Then you get Bone Spirit, the fact that you'll get Essence afterwards, and all these passives, especially this one, after you spend 100 Essence, it will reduce the cooldown of your Bone skill. So it does work on Bone Spirit, it's interesting to have it, and it will also work, of course, on the Bone Storm. So it's very good to have this one for both of these skills. You want this one and this one for the sacrifice, and you can put the last point here if you want in order to increase your attack speed. It's just interesting against bosses because it will boost your base attack, and that's why you can put 1 point here. Lastly, Deossified Essence in order to boost your overall damage. Now for the Paragon, first you want to have control. You can also think about Undaunted if you prefer, both are good, and then you want to get here in order to put this glyph to increase your physical damage and boost these nodes. Then you want to get here, get this one too, be careful, you want only these nodes, and get this legendary node with Bonecraft. Then you want to get here, you'll get this node to increase your damage after consuming curse, and this one which will boost the damage to curse enemies. After that you go down, we get this one, increase vulnerable damage but also giving you a boost of 10% damage. You get this node, and you want to get all these nodes because they'll boost damage to healthy enemies, and it will help you to one-shot everything. You can also get this one, increase critical strike damage, which is very good, and then get here, get this glyph in order to have critical strike damage, and this node to boost the damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies, as this one will be very interesting with our construct. I'll finish with the gameplay, and you'll have T100 dungeon, Uber Lilith, Uber Duriel, and against bosses you simply need to generate spirit and to launch your Bone Spirit. Before you launch the first Bone Spirit, make sure to generate a bit of Bone passive, and after that use your Bone Spirit. In Nightmare Dungeons, you'll want to use the combo with Corpse Tendrils, pack them, curse them, and then send your Bone Spirit. You'll just need to work a bit the combo in order to be familiar with this setup. You'll also want to always have your Bone Storm, that's why you want to curse enemies in order to reduce your cooldown, and if you have the right aspects, not like me, it will be very easy to always have your Bone Storm. Afterwards, you'll see that you can do whatever you want in the game, and with a build which is very fun to play. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you'll have plenty of fun with this build, and if something is not very clear because there's plenty of few tricks that you need to understand, if it's not clear enough, make sure to post in the comment, I'll be happy to answer you.